Imagine walking the streets of Paris on a quiet day in June 1867, the kind of morning with gentle sunlight and distant church bells. Suddenly, your peace is shattered by the screams of a woman running wild in the street. This isn't just any woman. She's young, beautiful, dressed like royalty, and she's delirious. She yells that she is the Empress of Mexico and she must save her husband from death. Passers-by stare in horror and disbelief. Who is this madwoman? What unimaginable nightmare has brought her to this terrifying breaking point? This shocking scene is just the end of an impossible story. To understand, we have to rewind 2 decades. Charlotte of Belgium was born into a world of crowns and political games. From the day she first opened her eyes in the grand halls of Laeken Castle, nobody saw her as simply Charlotte. She was a chess piece on her father, King Leopold I's board. Her father was a shrewd king who built his power with deals and marriages. He saw his daughter not as a child, but as a precious asset. Charlotte was polished and trained by the best teachers, languages, history, diplomacy, all to make her an irresistible prize on the royal marriage market. Every ballroom lesson, every polite smile was part of a careful plan. By age 17, that plan pounced. Leopold arranged a marriage for Charlotte with Archduke Maximilian of Habsburg, the brother of Austria's emperor. Maximilian was young and handsome, with no throne to call his own. On the surface, the wedding was magical. 2 grand ceremonies in Brussels and Vienna, glittering gowns, music and dancing that went on for days. Charlotte seemed happy, even love-struck. She had married into Europe's grandest family and could have been living a fairy tale. Together they settled in Miramar Castle by the sea, hosting balls and charity events, basking in the glow of new love. But beneath the surface, a darker current was already pulling them toward disaster. Europe in the 1850s was a cauldron of ambition and empire building. In 1863, France's Emperor Napoleon III unleashed a wild idea. He wanted to carve a new Catholic empire out of Mexico. He promised a grand destiny to Maximilian, crown him Emperor of Mexico, if he'd take the throne and rule on France's behalf. To a prince with no kingdom, this sounded like a once-in-a-lifetime adventure. The offer was seductive and dangerous. France would send troops and money to prop up the empire, solving Maximilian's and Charlotte's money woes, and give them a throne of their own. Charlotte, raised on stories of glory and empire, dared to dream big. Everyone told her she could help bring progress and justice to Mexico. Her father encouraged it too. Leopold thought it was a golden ticket to global influence. In secret letters years later, he even admitted he was willing to risk his daughter's life for the sake of Belgian power. Charlotte, caught between love and duty, finally agreed. In 1864, the couple waved goodbye to Europe, boarding a ship bound for a continent far away and a destiny of empire. The journey was a mixture of excitement and dread. 6 weeks at sea gave Charlotte time to study everything about Mexico. She buried herself in books, practicing Spanish and learning indigenous languages, convinced that a good empress would speak the people's tongue. She imagined ruling a vibrant kingdom under palm trees and ancient pyramids. But when Charlotte finally stepped onto Mexican soil in May 1864, the fairy tale shattered. Mexico was not ready to be ruled by a European. The country was torn apart by civil war, its cities scarred by artillery fire. The grand parade they had expected was nowhere to be found. Instead, the streets were dark, hungry faces and buildings damaged in battles. Mexican conservatives had begged Europe to intervene, but the support for a foreign emperor was fragile at best. The royal couple quickly understood their stunning palace dreams were built on shaky sand. For a time, Charlotte fought back despair with determination. She threw herself into charity work, tried to learn Nahuatl to speak with native communities, and pushed for schools and hospitals. She wanted to be a kind empress, one who united rather than ruled. But each victory was small, and every day brought new horrors. Rebel gunfire echoed outside the capital, supply lines were cut, and without constant French soldiers to protect them, the empire would crumble. Meanwhile, far away, the United States, fresh from its own civil war, began to frown upon France's Mexican adventure. By 1866, America was quietly pressuring France to withdraw its support. Napoleon III, growing weary and facing troubles in Europe, decided to pull his troops out. But he kept this secret. Charlotte was among the first to sense the betrayal. She watched the French soldiers leave the Mexican villages. Without them, their fragile empire was doomed. Desperate to save the dream, Charlotte took the boldest step of her life. She boarded a ship back to Europe, determined to plead with the powers that be. Her first stop was Napoleon III himself. In the grand halls of the Tuileries Palace, Charlotte delivered her impassioned plea. But instead of a hero's welcome, she was met with cold reality. Napoleon had already decided the Mexican adventure was over. No more soldiers, no more money. Charlotte felt the air escape her lungs. Anger, fear, and betrayal collided inside her. In a scene witnessed by startled courtiers, she reportedly threw a tantrum in the corridors. She shrieked that she would rather die than abandon her husband. She screamed at Napoleon, demanded justice, and refused to accept his answer. It was the beginning of a breakdown that would never be undone. Rejected by France, Charlotte rushed to the Vatican. She believed if anyone could help, the Pope might. She begged Pope Pius IX to intervene for the soul of Mexico. But by then, the pressure had cracked Charlotte's mind. In the opulent chambers of the Vatican, she became convinced everyone wanted to poison or hurt her. A phantom conspiracy. She ranted and raved about hidden enemies, refused even the water offered to her, convinced it was laced with poison. Alarmed, Vatican officials called physicians. Her face lost all composure. Eyes wild, she begged them to kill her quickly so she could go back to her beloved husband. It was a scene straight out of a nightmare. The Pope himself realized she was gravely ill. Charlotte had succumbed to a complete mental collapse. With a heavy heart, they sent Charlotte back to Belgium in 1866. Officially, they said she was recovering from exhaustion. In reality, the once brilliant and beautiful Empress was lost to a dark madness. She was put in a royal convent turned asylum, a gilded cage for her broken mind. Doctors quietly diagnosed schizophrenia, though no one used such words publicly. Leopold II, her uncle and successor to the throne, kept Charlotte's condition a hush secret. The empire in Mexico was left without its empress. When Maximilian learned of France's betrayal, he had no choice but to face the rebels alone. In June 1867, surrounded by the forces of President Benito Juarez, Emperor Maximilian refused to flee. He wanted to stay with his people, or perhaps he simply felt trapped by honor. He was captured after a brief trial and condemned to death. On June 19, 1867, in the town of Querétaro, he stood against a wall and was executed by a firing squad. The shots rang out, silencing one of the era's grandest dreams. The American dream of a new world empire perished in the blood on that Mexican morning. Back in Belgium, Charlotte never heard of her husband's fate. In her mind, she remained forever the Empress of Mexico, locked in a grand illusion. Decades passed in the stale halls of Belgian palaces, where caretakers kept the pretense alive. Visitors called her Madame and avoided her eyes. Charlotte would sometimes pick up a brush and pretend to paint maps of a country that no longer made sense. She went on living, or rather surviving, for 60 more years, empress of her own private hell, isolated from reality. Finally, in 1927, at age 86, Charlotte died quietly in her suite. Even in death, the royal family made it low-key. They feared the scandal of her life, the story it told about princes selling their daughters to power. At her very subdued funeral, any public mention of her true story was silenced. For Charlotte, the madness which began in 1866 never truly ended. She died without ever understanding the betrayal she suffered or how her great love met a violent end. Charlotte's life reads like a Gothic novel. A childhood spent under her father's ruthless ambitions. A passionate but doomed love. An empire built on lies, and a mind shattered by heartbreak and betrayal. Her story is a dark reminder that behind the glitter of 19th century crowns were very human lives. crushed by the impossible dreams of power and glory. It shows how one girl, a princess, was treated not as a person but as a bargaining chip, sold and used for political gain. Every palace ball, every desperate journey across the ocean, every silent scream in a royal corridor, they all testify to how ambition can become a nightmare. We've seen history's grand tales, but Charlotte's is one of its saddest. If her story shocks you, you're not alone. Kings and empires rose and fell, but Charlotte of Mexico became a tragic footnote. She paid the price of ambition with her sanity. Now, I'd love to hear what you think. What would you have done if you were in Charlotte's shoes? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want to uncover more unbelievable stories from history, make sure to subscribe for more tales that seem too crazy to be true.